All right, welcome back, and now let's take a look at what we have on our local dailies. On the front page of the Star newspaper, fiery Uhuru war could benefit Raila. Fiery Uhuru war could benefit Raila. Odinga allies line up in president's defense. One DP against challenging his boss. Odinga allies line up in president's defense. One DP against challenging his boss. And now analysts argue that the tension might erode Kenya Kwanza gains in Mount Kenya. All right, we won't interfere with your retirement. DP Ruto tells Uhuru. I'll give you more details briefly. And still on the front page here, there is a question on poll credibility, where IEBC have now been told to address 2017 concerns, and this from the poll observers who tell Chebukati team to make sure that everything is put in place. Now, we won't interfere with Uhuru retirement. DP, he says that war on graft is against those who enrich themselves unfairly. Deputy President William Ruto on Sunday dismissed reports that he might go after his boss, assuring President Kenyatta of state protection after retirement. Ruto told the president that, contrary to reports being peddled by his rivals, that he will prosecute him over corruption. He will not target anyone. The president was speaking in Meru, where he had in Lare, in Meru, where he had his 4-day tour of that region. Police officers on leave recalled on to prepare for polls due to Deputy Inspector General of Police, that is Edward Mbugua, directed that those on leave return to work by July 4th. Now, the same applies to all other services. The services is set to gazette dozens of other personnel from Kenya Prisons, Kenya Wildlife Service, Kenya Forest Service, and National Youth Services as special officers to boost security before, during, and after the polls. All right. Kenya extradites 4 Chinese to Ethiopia in murder probe. Incident happened in restaurant. They fled to Nairobi, hoping to escape to China. Now, it's said that the incident happened at a Chinese restaurant at the 5th floor of Tolosa Ligis building located in Meskel flower area of the capital, that is in Addis Ababa. The 4 were handed over by the Kenyan authorities to the local federal police. They were nabbed in Kilimani area here in Nairobi, where they had been for weeks seeking for ways of flying out to China. So as they speak, the 4 are currently under the Ethiopian authorities. How Raila will reap from soaring Uhuru-Ruto war. Now, the escalating verbal between President Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto could bolster Raila Odinga's state house fortunes. This is because Raila allies have lined up in Uhuru's defense, warning Ruto against challenging the authority of the president and threatening the country's stability. This is aimed at winning over Uhuru's supporters opposed to Ruto. And this is a conversation that dotted the campaign platforms yesterday and on Saturday, basically over the weekend, where Raila allies said that it's quite not in order for the DP to allege that he will prosecute his boss once he goes on retirement. I'll be back with more after this. Jen.
Let me run you through the front page of the Daily Nation. The main story here is in regards to the rising cost of living, and they have gone on to picture both former Premier Raila Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto looking at what they promised to implement, and especially so looking at using agriculture as a tool to ensure that within the first 100 days of office, should either of them ascend to that particular seat of presidency, they will be able to implement a number of things here. They've gone on to compare 5 from Raila's side of the divide and 4 from Deputy President William Ruto's side of the divide. But at the center still remains the question, or rather the demand by many Kenyans to bring down the cost of living. And the question still remains, who will have the solution to these needs that Kenyans have? I will be giving you details as per what has been highlighted in this daily as we move on. Away from that, there's also the story concerning the ugly spat between President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto that continue to present themselves in a number of occasions, and the latest one having been this past weekend. And experts are now questioning whether it's just political or there could be personal issues also arising in regards to this sort of squabbling that is going on between the deputy president and His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta. Away from that, looking at what has been termed as sibling rivalry in the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, Harvey attacks Mudavadi, terming him as a visionless and a rudderless leader that does not have a spine. All right. Away from that, looking at some bit of sports, is that there's a piece concerning the two most popular football clubs here in Kenya, that is Gor Mahia and Leopards FC, and the question around how these two clubs are managed. And they've gone on to say that it's such a shame how these two football clubs are being managed with no strategic thinking in the management that has cost them victory that they could have witnessed over a number of years, but sadly so, it hasn't come to pass due to the poor management that has been ongoing in these two football clubs. That is basically what has been captured here on the front page of the Daily Nation. Doreen.
Right, and polls, clerics and judges. This is what the PD is folding for you this Monday morning as its main read, whereby church leaders are now have waded in, particularly when it comes to matters election and what the judges also need to do. Just read a bit from what a section of them has said, is that this is actually a section of Catholic church leaders who has now asked the judiciary to put in place measures to hear and determine poll-related cases in a fair and speedy manner. They have also argued that the church, civil society and media are critical non-state actors in this election, and so they should not take sides. So they've also put their voice, particularly when it comes to this election, and what the various different bodies need to do, at least to ensure that they keep in line when it comes to the August 9 general elections. Also, American observers have presented a raft of measures, so to speak, and also a checklist for IEBC again as we prepare for the August 9th general election. The international poll of observers now want the Electoral Commission to conduct a countrywide test on the results reporting system. Remember that so far IEBC has conducted its first simulation process, which was marred by some challenges here and there. And they're also set now to conduct a second simulation process just to test how the process will look like come August 9th. And also some of those things that the international observers have also given as checklists also concerned issues to do with the campaigns, particularly for those political leaders, the issue of inclusion and also voter education, saying that the IEBC still needs to ensure that they continue doing the voter education, and they should accelerate this throughout the country just before we get to the August 9th day there. Also, the polls team should prioritize strategic and regular communication with the media as well as the public. These are just some of the things that the international observers are now urging the IEBC to do, and they're saying that this is necessary and important also to build confidence amongst Kenyans. And yes, it looks like perhaps there could be trouble brewing in Kenya Kwanza amongst the section of parties there. This is even as the senatorial aspirant in Kakamega, that is Boni Halwale, now says that ANC party leader, that is Musalia Mudavadi, is now denouncing his party's candidates in favor of those in UDA. That is what Boni is saying. Of course, this article well highlights the reasons to why the senatorial aspirant is feeling and is saying that, when it looks like this has actually been his concern over time. And now it is the season of manifestos. Yes, it is. From listening and to various political factions talking about what they will do when it comes to economic revamping, to matters to do with healthcare, education, amongst various host of things that we have had so far in the three manifestos that have been unveiled by the three presidential candidates, rather, so to speak, there. Again, also, could it be a time that we need to start exploring, different forms of agriculture, such as snake rearing or the selling of hyena testicles? Yes, I know you had that just as much as I did. But this is not sitting well, again, with the section of Kenyans. Obviously, again, Kenyans themselves, section of clerics, and even right now, the vet practitioners are now if I should say, saying that Wajakoya, in his manifesto, in what he presented, in respect to that, is not the best thing that he could have done. So let me just read basically what they said. That is the Union of Veterinary Practitioners. Kenya now has condemned the recent claim that Kenya can trade in wildlife products. Again, when you get to those details, just be breaking down for you what exactly they have said and why they think this is wrong. And also, lastly, crisis looms in city over workers' strike. That is in Nairobi County. Again, this strike could be beginning today. Different issues that they have cited there, including failure to complete promotion of eligible staff, unwillingness to finalize pay rise negotiations, perennial electricity disconnection, and failure to pay NHIF premiums and remit monthly deduction. These are just some of the issues that the staff of Nairobi County are now decrying, and perhaps what could be leading to their strike beginning today. Ray.
A sneak peek of the Standard this morning being the 4th of July 2022. You can bet with 35 days to go, matters of politics have taken center stage, with a big read captured here is Uhuru jibe at DP sparks war of words. We all heard what the head of state had to say in regard to what is happening in the political scene and his deputy stand. Quoted there is William Ruto. We voted for you when you needed us. We stood with you when you needed it. We are not saying you support us, but do not be angry with us. Those are words of Dr. William Ruto, current deputy president, who is eyeing the presidency ahead of the August polls. Now, frenemies, yes. There was a time we were terming the two, that's the president and his deputy there, with a bromance of sorts, matching shirts and ties, but currently, they're not seeing eye to eye. Now, in the unending war of words with his boss, Deputy President tells President Kenyatta to keep off politics and defend his manifesto as a solution to the country's problem. Well, details will be coming up in not too long. But that's just the main read on this particular paper. And just to skim through on all the other stories that have found themselves on the front page of this particular daily, I'd want to take your attention to what the Kenya Kwanza campaign trail body had to say in regard to a deal that has been signed by National Treasury between Dubai's firm, that is a Dubai firm that is supposed to be running the ports. Now, according to the Dock Workers Union, they have rejected the state proposal to hand over the Mombasa, Lamu and Kisumu ports operations to a Dubai-based terminal operator. Now, the idea is to privatize key services at the port of Mombasa. That has continued to spark a lot of debate, with Deputy President William Ruto's camp there calling for its suspension. According to the Dock Workers Union Secretary General, they say if the government feels that DP World, that is a Dubai-based operator there, so to speak, is fit or will be useful in developing special economic zones, they should subject it to public participation and appoint the task force of Kenyans who have expertise in such investments to look into it. Further on, this workers' body has said that they do not want to work under DP World, not because they have personal reasons, but they have knowledge and experience that this DP World is not a good employer, and they are worried and concerned about how the workers will be treated. We'll be looking at that development. Remember, this was made public last week as Kenya Kwanza was making, or rather publicizing, its manifesto, and a letter came to various media houses, the radios and TV as well, indicating that there was this conversation. There was a letter to that fact. The National Treasury there, it was signed in March. and that would give control to DP World, which is a Dubai-based terminal operator. Development in regard to that issue. Also, another story that has made it to the front page is about betting, and now we're talking about just how many betting firms are licensed to operate in the country. Statistics indicate that only 3 have so far had their licenses renewed. And these 3 happen to be Shop and Deliver Limited, the owners of Betika, Pesa Bets Limited, which runs Belta Afrique, and Silicon Solutions Limited, which operates Sportica platform. All the rest of the 97 that are operating in the country are not licensed. Now, this is according to the chairperson of the Betting Control and Licensing Board, that is Cyrus Minor, who said now only 3 have been licensed for the 2022-2023 financial year. And as such, the board has notified not only the gaming operators and also users that those who have been found compliant with the Betting and Lotteries Act, as well as the operating requirements issued by the board on the 1st of July 2022, those are free to operate. Those are the 3 that I mentioned. Their licenses have been renewed for 2022-2023. However, the rest are operating illegally. And there's been an investigation on numerous illegal betting and gaming companies that are operating in the country, some of which are using M-Pesa, although they have no permanent residence in Kenya and are not regulated. So in case you're into sports betting, you need to know exactly who you are investing in. Remember, as much as you earn, these particular firms also earn off your gambling, so to speak, or gaming. So that's just a sneak peek of the front page of this particular daily, with 35 days to the August polls. And also an interesting piece here is about Fai Amarillo. I don't know if you remember the brewer there of the early 2000s, whose logo would show fists held by some calves there. Fai Amarillo. Now there's a battle for his wealth. Family battles for the control of the estate. New valuation reports reveals that the brewer had vast investments in land and properties across 14 counties. This is fleshed out for you in this particular daily. Jane?
Now, let me quickly bring you back to the Daily Nation and go over this main read this morning concerning the rising cost of living, which is pain in so many Kenyans' necks. And according to the manifestos that have been presented to Kenyans so far, agriculture is also at the center of most of this, and different, sectors of the agricultural sector. But the main concern still remains bringing down the cost of living for the common mwananchi. Now, looking at a report that was put out by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it was released last week on Thursday. It indicated that inflation rose to the highest levels in the past 5 years since 2017, when it was last at its highest. In 2017, it was at 8.2. Yes, 8.2. And looking at the past 5 years, it hadn't gone that high again. But looking at the most recent statistics, it currently stands at 7.9%. And this 7.9 is already past the inflation ceiling that has been put in place by the CBK, which stands at 7.5%. Now, looking at these figures, and the first 6 months of this year alone, basic commodities have had their prices increased by over 50%. A packet of unga that was on average retailing at 140 Kenya shillings at the beginning of this year in January, right now we have crossed the 200 Kenya shilling mark. And this is a big burden for so many Kenyans. But looking at some of the promises that have been made by some of the presidential aspirants, looking at what Raila Odinga and Ruto have promised in regards to using agriculture to bring down the cost of living, and especially so looking at the first 100 days that they will be in office. Raila's side promises to improve access to affordable inputs, and this range from seeds, fertilizer and chemicals that are used in the planting process. Number 2, they have promised to implement minimum guaranteed returns to farmers and eliminate losses in between the process. Number 3, they promise to promote agro-processing and value addition, and this is supposed to help improve and expand the accessibility internally and also in the export market. Number 4, they promise to adjust budgets to continue with subsidies for fuel. And number 5, they also promise to invest in the mechanization, digitization, and application of science and technology in the whole chain, looking at the agricultural process. On Ruto's side of the divide, when it comes to using agriculture as a tool to bring down the cost of living, they promise to increase production. That only requires addressing the cost, quality, and access to inputs, again ranging from seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and the likes. Number 2, they promise to increase the supply of quality seeds, because a quality seed will ultimately lead to quality harvest. Number 3, they promise to provide adequate, affordable working capital. Number 4, to deploy modern agricultural risk management instruments. And number 5, to reduce dependence on imports of basic commodities, and this range from the common foods that we eat, from wheat to sugar. Now, looking at these aspects, they mirror each other, but then again, they promise to implement this should they be voted in as president within the first 100 days of office. Agriculture at the center of this conversation. You can go ahead and read more about that here. And also looking at the fact that both of them promise to reduce our reliance on imports. On the other hand, we're also dealing with the competing power of the Kenyan shilling against the US dollar. And this especially so limits our power when it comes to it, because looking at a report here, the Kenyan shilling has weakened by 4.2% against the US dollar. In January, the exchange rate was at 113 Kenya shillings, but now it's at 117 Kenya shillings, and most of these issues have been attributed rather to COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, and of course high taxes that are coming, and election-related tensions are all to blame to this mess that we are witnessing in the country, that consequently is also weakening the Kenyan shilling against the US dollar, and also affecting foreign exchange and our capacity to bargain in the international market. And maybe just I can rope you guys in looking at this aspect that the Kenyan shilling is losing its value in the international space, and bringing this conversation to the home space. Prices are just going up by the day. Victor.
It's a crazy moment for Kenyans. Somebody was saying that if you have 1,000, actually we even did that mathematics here last week with Regina. If you have 1,000 bob, that's not even enough to, serve a family for, 3 meals in a day. You just have to be creative. We'll have to be creative in terms of how we are going to be spending moving forward. But most of the politicians say that the next move is economic recovery. How will that happen?
Within the first 100 days.
Exactly, within 100 days. A raft of measures must be put in place. All right. Raila walks tightrope in Nyanza turf over 6 P's vote push. The ODM chief fears that the approach could antagonize his presidential vote. It's also seen that this comes after the ODM boss made a dramatic U-turn on his earlier calls for a 6 P's voting pattern. In his Nyanza stronghold. Raila, who has been on a 3-day campaign tour of his Nyanza backyard, has been forced to drop his earlier push for zoning, as well as not to antagonize his presidential vote. So politicians and analysts have also argued that any push to zone some regions could hurt mobilization for the presidential vote, forcing Raila to make a tactical retreat. It was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. All right. I'll release Bang inmates, award them 1 million shillings each, says Wajakoya. I'll release Bang inmates, award them 1 million shillings each, says Wajakoya. Roots Party presidential candidate has pledged to free all Bang inmates and award them 1 million shillings each. He was speaking during his campaign tour of Mombasa on Saturday. Wajackoya said that he will sign an executive order to release the convicted bang peddlers. And on that note, before we go so high on in times of municipal, let's take a break. We'll be right back with more.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us this far. We continue with a quick look at what the dailies have for us this morning. And before I throw it over to you, Doreen, here there's a piece concerning the petitioner against Senator Sakaja's degree. And now Senator Sakaja has come out to claim that the voter who is seeking to have his disqualification from the gubernatorial race is a hired gun. Okay, so he said that this particular voter, that is Dennis Gakuwahome, is a hired gun that has been rather sent by people in high places, quote unquote, to embarrass him, to humiliate him, and to have him unreasonably restricted to exercise his political and social rights. He went on to question how he was able to access his ability to access these multiple documents, including the alleged immigration records and the Jubilee Party nomination applications that are dated back to 2016. Now, he questioned his ability to be able to access these particular documents if he wasn't a hired gun sent by people who are high up, to, shake his gubernatorial aspirations. So you can read more of that and get to read his response to this particular claim that was made against the authenticity of his degree from Thames University in Uganda. Doreen.
There's really been a lot of back and forth in respect to his qualification. Anyway, let's now look at the raft of measures that the international observers, in detail now, that the international observers has given the IEBC. Remember, like we said earlier, is that IEBC conducted its first simulation process on June 9th. This is just basically a test run to see how things will work come August 9th. If at all there are challenges that were spotted, and then this is why they are set to conduct another simulation process to now see how best they can seal those loopholes, at least so that when it comes to August 9th, then things could at least be seamless, if I should say that. So now coming to those raft of nations, perhaps you can just begin with what they said in respect to the campaigns. Now, regarding the campaigns, they say political parties and candidates should demonstrate commitment to peace before, during, and after elections by publicly endorsing and adhering to electoral code of conduct and other peace pledges. Mother, so far we have seen, rather, if I should say, chaos in some parts, particularly during this campaign period. Just the recent one was what happened in Jacaranda. And again, remember that also when IEBC was meeting the presidential candidates, these are some of the things that they were just trying to iron out. The instance where one political party or one political affiliation has booked a certain space and then the other one has booked a certain space. So what normally happens to a point whereby you get two different coalitions booking the same space, the same day, the same time? This is some of the things that they were trying to iron out. And again, this is what also the international body is saying, that there needs to be peace, and this is largely also from the political parties and the various candidates there, and that this, they need to demonstrate that. Also, on the issue of inclusion, they urge all key stakeholders, political parties, IEBC, civil society groups, media, and the security sector to put in place urgent measures to remove obstacles that hinder the full participation of women, young people, persons with disabilities, and marginalized groups. Again, in this aspect, we have seen rather a lot of complaints, particularly coming from the women folk, and when it comes to respect to inclusion, and also the PWDs. And again, this is what they urge, that IEBC needs to ensure that they as well as the various stakeholders which I've just mentioned, they need to ensure that they put in place various measures whereby these marginalized groups can also be given equal and fair chance to participate in this year's elections. Also, they weighed in on the voter education, whereby they say that this needs to be accelerated throughout the country with a focus on election day procedures and post-election process, and specific outreach again to women, youth and PWDs. Again, also the marginalized in our communities or societies coming out there. Now, in terms of good advice, also they've given raft of measures there to the parties, aspirants and media, watchdogs and stakeholders, security agencies. And what they say to security agencies, that to counter hate speech and mitigate all forms of violence, especially again still against women and persons living with disabilities. So from what the international observers are saying is that this is important, and according to them, is to build confidence in poll results, address unexpected challenges to avoid surprises on election day. So this is what the international observers are saying. And again, remember that this is just also as we await the second simulation process by the IEBC. And also this is, again, as we also await the unveiling of the manifesto by David Mwaure, that is the Agano Party presidential candidate, which is actually expected to be happening today. And the biggest question is that we're asking is that, is it going to be similar as the same that we've had from the three other presidential candidates? Is there going to be any difference? And even as these manifestos are being unveiled, the biggest question Kenyans are asking is that there needs to be a detailed breakdown of how these promises are going to be actualized, so that Kenyans can be able to hold these leaders accountable if any of them assumes office after August 9th general elections. Ray.
Now, who can afford to take Ronaldo? Yes, I'm talking about CR7, who has said that he would like to leave Manchester United if he receives a suitable offer. But who can afford him in terms of if it's not Manchester United? Well, as a Manchester United fan, I'm just saying, hey, okay, we're doing so badly. This is the worst we have done in the last 40 years. If CR7 actually, even if we were to subsidize the value in which that he was signed on, because remember, this was a player who was signed on for around 20 million euros. That's around 2.8 billion shillings. Yeah, last season. That's around 71 million a week, right? And for a person who he's 37, you know, under 40, and he scored, I think, 24 goals in the Premier League, but now for the last few seasons there he's only scored 5. But we can tell it's not because of lack of trying, but that team, we are doing badly. So if you're a sport fanatic, this is quite an article that you'd want to familiarize yourself with, and just wait and see exactly who, or rather what move Manchester United will be picking up. Remember, he's already said that he has a desire of playing in the Champions League now. So Erling Haaland going to Manchester City, Robert Lewandowski in the midst of securing a Barcelona move. We have Harry Kane, who has settled at Spurs, Kylian Mbappe signing in at PSG. You know, while we're waiting to see who is going to be picking CR7, well, it is a great loss for Manchester United, but we all know seniors in the Manchester United team, that was a bad decision of having CR7 come, but hey, we loved to see him there. It's just that the rest of the team members, and that is entirely my opinion, were not ready to step up. Also on sports is that now AFCON, that was set for 2023, has been pushed to 2024, and the next Africa Cup of Nations will be played in Ivory Coast. It was to be hosted between June and July of 2023, which is the height of the rainy season in Ivory Coast. So they're avoiding to take up that particular risk. Remember, in light of climate change and such, well, now it has been moved there. 2024 is when you're going to have finals for the AFCON Cup. So that I was just giving you a sneak peek onto what is happening. And as far as the sporting arena, we have so much, including what is happening in our local rugby scene, and you can find this on our website. Across the world, The UN has condemned protesters storming into the Libyan parliament. Now, hundreds of protesters marched into the streets of the capital, Tripoli, and other Libyan cities on Friday, many attacking and setting fire to the government buildings, including the House of Representatives in the eastern city of Tarbuk. Now, protesters also rallied on Saturday in Tripoli and several towns in western Libya, blocking roads and setting fires ablaze, according to a live stream on social media. Now, according to these protesters, they are frustrated from years of chaos and division and have called for the removal of the current political class and elections to be held. We all remember what happened to Pan-Africanist Muammar Gaddafi there, and since then, Libya has never been the same. Also across the world, we are keenly waiting to see the turn that Ukraine and Russia war is going to take. Given that updates there is that Ukrainian fighters have spent weeks trying to defend Luhansk and to keep it from falling to Russia. Now, Luhansk and neighboring Donetsk are two provinces that make up Donbass, where Russia has focused itself in, since pulling back from the north of Ukraine. So much is happening. We thought the Ukraine-Russia war was far removed from us locally until the biting effect. We started feeling the biting effect of that particular war. The cost of fertilizer has gone up. The cost of wheat that we cannot satisfy demand has also gone up. This is just exacerbated the high cost of living for Kenyans. Just to remind you that you're going to continue keeping tabs on what is happening regionally, internationally, as well as the local scene, with 35 days to go to the next general election. Now back to you, Jane.
All right, before we get to wrap it up here, maybe Victor, you could give us a final run through over the star.
Absolutely. All right. So as we head towards the election, Address 2017 concerns observers tell IBC their analysis reveals serious lapses on the transmission of results 35 days to the general election. The two institutions, that is in its latest assessment, a delegation from the International Republican Institute, IRI, and the National Democratic Institute, NDI, led by former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, has cited the recent simulation of the technology by the agency. And now they said that IBC should address the 2017 concerns as we head to the polls. And finally, experts outraged by Wajakoya's plan to trade in hyenas and snake's meat. Scientists call idea recipe for disaster, say 75% of all emerging infectious diseases come from wildlife. So here the story is that the Union of Veterinary Practitioners Kenya warned that the move would bring a disaster. So Secretary General Miheso Mulembani said that trading in wildlife will see a spike in zoonotic diseases owing to the spill of viruses, bacteria, and parasites from hyenas and snakes from the wild into human beings. So the proposal by Roots Party that the country would farm snakes and trade in hyenas' testicles has received a round of loud condemnation. That started way back.
Victor.
Now, I remember when the report on the animal census was actually made public. Yeah, we got to know the number of hyenas that Kenya has, so to speak. And this is a conversation that has been so rife, and Kenyans are making, jokes around it. And I'm thinking, there might be someone out there who is really going to dare and do such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are going to be here reporting someone was mauled by a pack of hyenas trying to harvest their... I mean, let's take some things with a tinge of salt. That's what I'm saying. It's the campaign season, but let's think through over some things. Look at even where we are in as far as the venom bank is concerned.
Yeah.
Look at the number of deaths and amputations that have been recorded in Baringo. So by the time we even start doing snake farming and importing all this, have we satisfied the demand that we have? And it goes back to what the clergy was saying over the weekend, just warning the public in regard to, you know, some of the political conversations that are ongoing in these campaigns, and especially with the Roots Party. And they took a particular issue with the issue of marijuana. You know, so we need to take a few things from the campaign trail with a tinge of salt. And I saw a certain report actually over the weekend, 2 children, I think, were attacked by a hyena in Machakos. Thereabout. Please, these are wild animals. Don't think about those things. Life is difficult, but let's not go there.
Regina, just how to get that animal in the first place?
That's what I'm talking about.
The question. How will you get it?
But
how do you even, and let me just throw in there, and I agree with you 100%, Regina, just take those things with a tinge of salt. It's like, again, the Roots Party candidate says that if at all he actually gets the office, he'll suspend the constitution in 6 months. And the question is, what will be in the interim as you're suspending? You know that country cannot run without a constitution, so really. And Kenyans are excited that, ooh, we can actually be living without a constitution. We can actually rear snakes. We can actually exchange hyena testicles. I think it's just the excitement that, you know, some of these candidates are promising Kenyans.
You know, what I find interesting is looking at this aspect of wild animals. Regina, there was this nationwide call that was made out for people who want to sponsor some wild animals. If you want a wild animal named after you, just chomwa some cash that will go towards
conservation,
maintaining the reserves and the parks as there is. But now here still we have this conversation about wild animals and them being used as now being a product. Isn't that going against the milestones that we have achieved so far, going against the grain? You know,
and that's why the section, the different stakeholders are coming to condemn that with the strongest voice possible.
But look at it this way: how many hyenas would they have to kill to settle our debt?
Did he
how
say?
Many?
Was it 1,000 or how many did he say?
We only have, I think, 2,400 and something, if my mind, or rather my memory serves me right, in regard to the report that was made, the national census of these animals that we have.
Did he mean we castrate them?
And Kenyans should know that in the jungle,
first of all, you have to keep
a hyena has the strongest jaws in the world.
Okay. All right. So we are told that our time is up. Regina, you
leave the hyenas alone. Don't.
Wow, that's your call to action message.
Yes, you see, people are making funny jokes online, and someone somewhere might be just desperate enough and will be reporting mauling and death. Let's be very serious.
All right, Kenyans should just be careful. And as the experts have said, the viruses, the bacteria, and all the zoonotic diseases, we have to be very much careful about this. All right, let's take a break, and we come back now. We'll be diving into the political matters of the day. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.